Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langyate girem yatkrpatamaham vande Shri Gurudin Taranam Paramanandam Madhavam. Hare Krishna. So we are resuming our discussion from fourth canto, chapter 27, which essentially talks about the attack of Chandvik on the city of King Puranjan and the character of Kalkalya. So as we had explained earlier on, this is yet another metaphor in which Chandvik is in the story is called Yavan Raja, the king of the Yavans, and he represents Kal or Mrityu. The two terms are synonymously used. Sometimes it's called Kal, sometimes it's called he is either called Mrityu or Bhaya, fear or death. And so he attacks the city of King Puranjan, essentially meaning that as time goes on, the body of the Jiva is attacked. And who are his soldiers? So he has 36 Gandharvas, 360 Gandharvas and 360 Gandharvis. So they represent the days and the nights of a year. So essentially, as every day and every night goes on, the body is being weakened. And who is protecting the body? The five-hooded snake. So this five-hooded serpent is essentially the five life airs that are sustaining the body. And as the story goes on, it explains how by repeated onslaught of the Yavan Raj along with his Gandharva soldiers, the serpent becomes weaker and weaker until finally the city is overrun. Okay, so we are resuming our discussion from verse 18. Sa eva puryam madhubhuka panchaleshu swapashadaha upanitam balim grana stri jito ne vidadbhayam. King Puranjan collected taxes in the city known as Panchal, and thus was engaged in sexual indulgence. Being completely under the control of women, he could not understand that his life was passing away and that he was reaching the point of death. So the city of 9 gates is also known as the city of 5 senses. So Panchal, Panch means 5, Panchal is the city of 5 senses. So Puranjan was collecting taxes, which means that essentially he was taking enjoyment from the city. So it says Sa eva Puryam Madhubhuk. So Prabhupada translates Madhubhuk as sexual pleasure. Vishwanath Chakravarti translates it as insignificant pleasures. And in a way, they're synonymous. Considering the fact that sexual pleasures are insignificant, they're synonymous. So he was essentially collecting these taxes, which means that he was enjoying the senses for insignificant pleasures. Then Stri Jita. Stri Jita means that he was conquered by women. And this refers to the illusion of the jiva of being controlled by material intelligence. So his queen is, of course, material intelligence, and the jiva under the illusion is being controlled by it. He is also controlled by the other women. So the word woman is used in plural over here. So earlier on, we had seen that when King Puranjan comes into the palace, he sees that his wife is not there, but the other women are there. So we had discussed that the other women are essentially past impressions, which means that by material indulgence in the past, there were these samskars or these impressions created of the desire to enjoy materially. Right? Prabhupada at one point explains that a young man, he does not have to be taught to be attracted to a young woman, and vice versa. It comes naturally. Why does it come naturally? Because it has happened in the past. And those previous attachments have left strong impressions. So acting on that impressions, the jiva acts. So similarly, here Puranjan, controlled by his material intelligence, controlled by the impressions of pleasures that he has taken in his past lives, he considers himself to be enjoying. Like he's collecting taxes, which means that he's getting something. He's considering himself to be enjoying, not knowing that death is approaching. So time is being described here as imperceptible and invincible. So in these two verses, 17 and 18, time is described as imperceptible yet invincible at the same time. So the previous verse, 17, it showed the anxiety of Puranjan at the attack of Chandvega. You can just give me 1 minute. Sorry. So from the previous verse, we could see that Puranjan was reacting to the attack of Chandvega. In this verse, we see that he could not understand that the attack was happening. Right? So both the things are happening. He's anxious because of the attack, but he does not understand that the attack is happening. So the jiva understands that he is aging, but he does not accept death. Right? So he looks upon the effect of time as aging as invincible, but the effect of time as death as imperceptible. So perceptible means that one acknowledges and perceives it. And that is something that the jiva is unable to do. Right? So we have all personal experience, or we are having personal experience of that. Nobody will deny the fact that they're aging. They may or may not accept it, but they will definitely be aware of the fact that they are aging. One has to be like really delusional to say that I'm not aging. And at the same time, nobody will accept the fact that they are dying. So everybody thinks that death is inevitable, but it will not happen today. So what do they say? That death may happen tomorrow. And then when the tomorrow comes, the same statement is used again. that death may come tomorrow. So in a way, tomorrow never comes. That's the nature of tomorrow, right? So whether the person is young or middle-aged or old, they are aware of the fact that they will die. But they will not accept the fact that it is going to happen. So that part is imperceptible. They're not able to perceive. Right? So verse 18, it talks about the fact that the jiva is not able to perceive the ultimate consequence of time, which is death. In verse 17, the jiva is constantly perceiving the debilitating effect of time, which is aging. So Prabhupada talks about the prevalent philosophy of enjoying in the present without being concerned about the future. So Prabhupada says the atheistic theory was conceived long ago by a philosopher known as Charvak. Charvak recommended that a man should live very opulently by either begging, borrowing, or stealing. He also maintained that one should not be afraid of death, the next life, the past life, or an impious life. Because after the body is burned to ashes, everything is finished. This is the philosophy of those who are too materially addicted. So from this we can understand that atheism is actually a byproduct of materialism. That the only way a person can fully enjoy unrestrictedly the senses is by denying the presence of God. Because when one accepts the presence of God, one has to accept the instructions of God, and the instructions at a bare minimum talk about controlling the senses. Atheism in itself does not have any foundation. It is materialism that has the foundation, and atheism is essentially a byproduct of it. Okay, moving on to verse 19. Kalasya duhita kache trilokim varamechati paryatam tinamarisham pratyanananda kaschana. My dear King Prachina Bharishad, at this time, the daughter of formidable time was seeking her husband throughout the three worlds. Although no one agreed to accept her, she came. So from here till the end of the chapter, these 12 verses, 19 to 30, are going to talk about the story of Kal Kanya. Kal, as you know, is time. Kanya means woman, also daughter. Right? So Narad Muni is going to describe the effect of old age through the allegory of Kal Kanya as the daughter of time. So Kal Kanya is essentially Jara, which means old age. And she is considered as the daughter of time since she is the product of time. Now, time itself cannot be considered as old age. Right? One can say, why have the daughter of time represent old age? Isn't time old age? But time is not linear. Right? Time is cyclical. Just as the time destroys, time creates also. So one takes birth, one grows by the effect of time, one declines by the effect of time, and then one again becomes youthful by the effect of time. So time cannot be old age. But the particular aspect of time that comes between birth and death is jara. That is the product of time, which is old age. So Prabhupada says the invalidity of old age is, as jara is figuratively explained here as the daughter of time. No one likes her, but she is very much anxious to accept anyone as her husband. No one likes to be old and invalid, but this is inevitable for everyone. Prabhupada explains the allegory. Why doesn't anybody like Kal Kanya? Because Kal Kanya is jara, and nobody likes to be old and invalid. Okay, next verse, 20. Daurbhagyatmano loke vishruta durbhagyati sa yatustaraj rishayetu vratada purave varam. The daughter of time, Jara, was very unfortunate. Consequently, she was also known as Durbhag, ill-fated. However, she was once pleased with a great king. And because the king accepted her, she granted him a great benediction. So typically what happens is that when a person faces misfortune, there is lamentation. Similarly, when a person becomes old, the person laments. Because with old age comes invalidity and disease and loss of opulences, loss of vitality. So the person laments. So because lamentation is also associated with misfortune, old age is being called misfortune. So in the verse, the second line, Vishruta Durbhage Tisa, refers, actually the third line, Yatushta Raj Rishetu, it refers to King Puru. So in Mahabharata, there is the pastime of King Puru, Bhagavatam also, who accepts old age from his father. So I think all of you are very familiar. It appears, this pastime appears more, it's described more in details in the Bhagavatam. It's referred in the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 18th chapter, where Yayati marries Devyani. She's the daughter of Shukracharya. And then on the side, he also marries Sarmishta, who is the daughter of the king of the demons. I forget his name, Rishapi, I think. So when Devyani finds out about it, she goes and complains to Shukracharya, and Shukracharya gets upset at Yayati and says that you are so anxious to have sexual relationships, so may you become old. So then Yayati, he pleads and begs to Shukracharya, and Shukracharya says, I cannot take back my curse, but I can modify it. That if somebody can accept your old age, you can regain your youth. So then he goes to each of his sons. So he has 5 sons, and he goes to each one of them, asking them to exchange, give him their youth and accept his old age. So he first goes to Yadu, his eldest son, and Yadu declines. So Yayati curses Yadu that none of your descendants will become kings. And Prabhupada explains that Yadu was a devotee of the Lord, and he wanted to hasten the appearance of Krishna. So he accepted this curse as an act of bhakti. So it was in the dynasty of Yadu that Krishna and Balaram appear. And that we note that neither Krishna nor Balaram are able to accept the throne because of the curse of Yayati. Then his next son was Turvashu. And Turvashu also declines. So Yayati curses that your dynasty will be consisting of unrighteous people who do not follow the Vedas. So the descendants of Turvashu are known as the Yavanas. And Prabhupada says that at one point he says that they refer to the Turkish dynasty, the area of Turkey. At another point also he notes that one should not think that this is restricted to a particular region of the world. It represents to people of a certain tendency that are spread all over the world. So it's people who are unrighteous, who do not follow the Vedic regulations, they are known as Yavanas. It's not necessarily the Yavanas are only in the West and not in the East. Prabhupada says that Yavanas are there in India as much as they are in any other country. Then the third son was Dhruv, and he also refuses. And Yayati curses him that none of your desires will ever be fulfilled. So the descendants of Dhruv are the Bhoja dynasty. And Kamsa is there in the Bhoj dynasty. Now in case of Kamsa, it's a good thing, but he is also affected by the curse that whatever he desired, he was frustrated in that desire. He wanted to kill Krishna, he was never able to kill Krishna. He wanted to be the undisputed leader, but he constantly lived in the fear of Krishna and Balaram. The fourth son was Anu. He also refused, and Yayati cursed that your descendants will live to a young age only. In other words, that they will die early. And the descendants of the Anu are considered to be Malechas. So again, Prabhupada at one point calls them the Greek. So I am not sure if there is any Vedic references, but generally the Yavanas are considered to be the Muslims, and the Malechas are considered to be the Christians. Now, obviously, this does not include those who are pious, those who are following their religion properly, but presumably it points to those who are straying from their religion. And of course, the last son was Puru. He accepted the youth from the old age from Yayati. And Yayati blessed him that your dynasty will always be prosperous and will rule over the entire kingdom. So the Kuru Vamshis are descendants of Puru, in which the Pandavas appear, and they of course have an exalted lineage. So Prabhupada actually talks about this in the purport of the first canto, 12th chapter, verse number 24. Okay, moving on to verse 21. Kadachit atmana sa brahmalokan mahim gatam vavre brahad vratam mantu janati kamamohita. When I once came to this earth from Brahmalok, the highest planetary system, the daughter of time, wandering over the universe, met me. Knowing me to be an avowed brahmachari, she became lusty and proposed that I accept her. So Narad Muni, he talks about his own example to indicate that old age does not afflict those who follow celibacy. Right? So he says, knowing me to be a Brihatvrata or a Naishtik Brahmachari, he says that I was not tempted by the daughter of time. So it's not that people who follow celibacy become immortal, but as it's mentioned elsewhere, that with every time there is a discharge of semen, the life forces diminish. So in his book called Brain Game, I forget the name of this the Swami who wrote it.
It's Danavar Swami.
Is it Danavar?
Danvir Goswami. Danvir Goswami.
Dhanvir Goswami?
Yep.
Right. So he gives various references and quotes to show how does preservation of semen nourish the brain. And one thing interesting that it's a little bit of a detour, but one thing interesting that when I was reading the book, it struck me was that many times the Vedas they speak in pictorial terms. Like it says over there that a person who does not discharge semen, the semen rises to the brain and nourishes the brain. Now, for a person who has a little bit of a scientific understanding of the anatomy of the body, it doesn't sound credible. That completely two different parts of the body, how can semen nourish the body, how can it rise, etc. But then when you look at it from a scientific perspective, it's explained that, and I read the book many, many years ago, but it talks about a particular protein that is used to manufacture semen, that is also used to replenish the neurons and the brain cells. Right. So essentially what it means that when it is being used constantly to produce more and more semen, then the nourishment of the brain cell gets depleted, and vice versa. When it is not used, then it's used to nourish the brain cell. Right. Now, maybe explaining that is a lot more difficult and pedantic. Right. So explaining it in a more pictorial term, that the semen rises and nourishes the brain, one can visualize it and one who has faith can accept it. But then I could also understand that many times the Vedas simplify for the common person, and does not mean that what they are saying is untrue. It just means that it needs to be scrutinized more deliberately. In the 5th canto, when the structure of the universe is described, now similarly statements are made for pictorial effect, that one can easily conceive it. But when one actually translates it into physical motions, then one needs to basically unwrap this poetry to get to the fact underneath it. Prabhupada says in the purport that Narad Muni was a Naishtik Brahmachari. He never had sex life. He has consequently evergreen youth. Old age Jara could not attack him. The invalidity of old age can overcome an ordinary man, but Narad Muni was different. Okay, verse 22. Mai sambrabhya vipula madakchapam sudhushalam statum arhasi nektra madhyancha vimukhamune. The great sage Narad continued, when I refused to accept her request, she became very angry at me and cursed me severely. Because I refused her request, she said that I would not be able to stay in one place for a long time. So Vishwanath Chakravarti, when he comments on it, he says that Narad is saying, angry with me for refusing, she cursed me. Actually, because I do not have any prarabdha karmas in my body, and thus am devoid of the 6 afflictions of lamentation, illusion, old age, death, hunger, and thirst, she cannot affect me. By refusing her request, I am able to travel everywhere to deliver people as a result of her curse, which is a form of mercy. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that that Narad Muni, his body is completely spiritual. So there are no prarabdha karma in it, which is why it cannot age. Same thing is seen in the description of Krishna, that his body is completely spiritual. So when he was fighting when he was present in Kurukshetra, like he was by material conceptions, he was in the latter part of his life. Like he was almost in his 90s at the time, because after the battle of Kurukshetra, the Pandavas ruled for 36 years, and then they left their planet. So considering that Krishna was about a little over 120 years when he left, one can understand that he was in his 90s during the battle of Mahabharata, but is always pictured as being a young man, as is Arjuna and Bhim and the Pandavas, etc. Again, because of their devotion to Krishna. Prabhupada says that since by his own free will, so he's referring to Narad Muni, he's already traveling all over the universe, the curse of Kalkanya is described as fortunate. Like Narad Muni, many other devotees of the Lord are engaged in preaching the glories of the Lord in different places and in different universes. Such personalities are beyond the jurisdiction of material laws. So later on in the 4th canto, I believe in verse chapter 30, we will see that, no, not in the 4th canto, in the 5th canto, towards the early chapters, we will see that Narad Muni is cursed by Daksha, same curse, that he says you will not be able to stay at a place for more than 3 days. So here, since the story is an allegory, the curse is also figurative. So the Kalkanya, this whole story represents something. So what does the cursing of Kalkanya to Narad Muni indicate? What Prabhupada is saying, that devotees, they are constantly traveling all over the universe, and in fact across universes. So they are beyond the jurisdiction of material laws. Essentially for a devotee, there is no difference between curses and benedictions, because by their devotion, they are able to transform the curses to benedictions. And same reason, when the devotees are cursed by the devotion, when the devotees curse somebody, because it is coming from a platform of bhakti, those curses also become benedictions. So when Narad curses Nalkuber and Managriv, then it ultimately is a benediction. Given their lives as it was, they could have never gotten the audience of Krishna. One of the commentators say that the most fortunate souls were Nalkuber and Managriv, because they were trees, they were fixed in the courtyard of Krishna. And they were watching each and every pastime of Krishna. The other personalities, they were traveling, or they had their own duties and responsibilities, and they were coming and going, but not these two personalities. They were anchored to the courtyard. And Krishna was playing under them. So whether this is a curse by Narad Muni or a benediction, it depends on the perspective. Ultimately, it was a greatest of benediction. And of course, then they got the actual benediction from Krishna when Krishna freed them. Now, Narad himself is an example of this, right? So he himself was, we see, cursed. So when he reveals his past life, in the Mahabharata, in the Mathur, no, this is in the Garg Samhita, sorry. In the Garg Samhita, he reveals that he was born as the son of Brahma in a previous day, in a previous Manvantra. He was born as not a Manvantra, in the previous day of Brahma. Right, in a previous Kalpa, he was born as the son of Brahma. Similar pastime happened that when he was born, then Brahma asked him to have progeny, and then Narad Muni refused. And so Brahma was angry at him. And then he cursed him that you are refusing my order to procreate, so you will be born as a Gandharva, where you will be overly attached to sense gratification. So this is revealed in a conversation between Radha and Krishna. So when Radha Rani once, out of curiosity, she asked Krishna about Narad Muni. So then Krishna reveals that he was born in an earlier day of Brahma as the son of Brahma. And then he was cursed by Brahma to become a Gandharva. So then in the following Kalpa, Narad Muni was born as a Gandharva. And this is explained in the Bhagavatam 7th canto. He says that I was Upabarana. I was a Gandharva by the name of Upabarana. And there I was so much attached to material enjoyment, specifically with opposite sex, that once Daksha had arranged for a Sankirtan party. And there were a lot of beautiful apsaras, and he said I was intoxicated. I was very charming and a beautiful singer. So I was basically singing non-devotional songs to attract them. And Daksha became angry and cursed him to become a Dasi Putra, to become the son of a maidservant. So then he takes birth as a Dasi Putra, and there he gets the benediction of the Bhakti Vedantas to become a devotee, right? And then he is born again as the son of Brahma, as Narad, and then he's again cursed by Daksha. So twice he's cursed by Daksha, by different Dakshas, but twice he's cursed by Daksha. He's again cursed by Daksha that cannot stay in a place for more than 3 days. So we see Narad's life, benediction, curse, but does not steer away from his path of bhakti. Okay, next verse, 23. Tato vihat sankalpa kanyakaya vaneshwaram mayopadestam asadya vavrenam nabhayam patim. After she was thus disappointed by me, with my permission, she approached the king of the Yavanas, whose name was Bhaya, or fear, and she accepted him as her husband. So Narad Muni refused Jara, but at the same time, out of compassion, he directs her to take shelter of fear. So Prabhupada says, in one stroke, Narad Muni gave shelter to Kalakanya and counterattacked the ordinary karmis. If one accepts the instructions of Narad Muni, the ocean of fear can be very quickly removed by the grace of the great Vaishnavas. So old age is always accompanied by fear. Right? So in old age, one fears almost everything. One fears death because it is closer, one fears health, one fears abandonment, one fears poverty, one fears physical attacks, one fears loss of opulence, and everything. And it becomes stronger and stronger as one grows older. So material life in general is a state of constant fear, but it is accentuated. It is greatly intensified as one becomes old. Okay, verse 24. Rishabham yava nanam tvama vrane virepshitam patem sankalpastvai bhutanam katakila narishyati. Approaching the king of the Yavanas, Kalakanya addressed him as a great hero, saying, "My dear sir, you're the best of the untouchables. I'm in love with you, and I want you as my husband. I know that no one is baffled if he makes friends with you." So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that fear was the king of the Yavanas, who represents mental and physical diseases. And then he says, there is a second meaning to the last phrase, that the vow of the devotees is never destroyed. Rishyati. So what does that mean? That Narad Muni made a vow that the fear of the people should be removed. So in order to honor that vow, Kalakanya, she goes to Bhaya or to fear, saying that you become my husband so I can enjoy you. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says the word Bhuta can mean the devotee of the Lord. For it is said, Janasya Krishna Vimukhasya Dve Dharmasya Shilasya Cha. In order to give mercy to the suffering people engaged in sin under the control of karma, who are ignorant of Krishna, the auspicious devotees of the Lord move in this world. So here Srila Prabhupada comments that Yavanas means those who do not follow Vedic principles. And they are not determined by nationality. And so one should not say that only people living in Turkey are Yavanas and only people living in Greece are Malechas. But it points to the propensity of the people. So one who does not follow rules of regulations, and Prabhupada then uses the term interchangeably, can be called a Yavana or a Malecha. One should not consider that they refer to men in certain countries only. So Prabhupada expands on the statement of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, where Narad Muni is indirectly, so when he ordered Kalakanya to associate with Bhaya, to become the wife of Bhaya, it could be also understood as saying that he is benedicting the devotees to be free of old age. Because Narad Muni is the head of the devotion. He represents, he is the embodiment of devotion. So Narad Muni did not accept old age, Similarly, devotees do not accept old age. As Prabhupada makes this point, that the daughter of Kal Jara cannot overtake a Vaishnava. And the example is given of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, that he was in his 90s when he wrote Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he himself was unwilling to take the service because he considered that he could leave his body at any moment. And then under the instructions of the Vaishnavas, instructions meaning under their prayers, he was a senior Vaishnava, but they came and begged him, but he took it as instructions. He said that he will write it, but he said, I will not sign it. Because he said that I will probably die before I finish it, but then the service will be taken by somebody else, and then it should be signed by that person. That person becomes the author of it. And then, of course, we know that he did complete Chaitanya Charitamrita, and so he agreed to put his name on it. Similarly, Prabhupada says Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, they took to Krishna consciousness relatively late in their lives. But they took to it with the enthusiasm of a youth. Right? They did so much, write so many books, construct temples. This is not something that the person who's in the older part of his life accomplishes. Because that's the nature of bhakti, that it is independent of age. And Prabhupada himself is an example of it, right? He was 70 when he started the movement. It's the time when people are looking to wind up. Prabhupada started something this big. So Prabhupada, in the purport, he briefly gives instructions on how a person can overcome old age by the process of bhakti. So he says that worship the deities according to the Narad Pancharatra, which is the instructions of Narad. So the Pancharatrika Vidhi is Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, and Atmanived. And then he says execute bhakti as per the Bhagavad Vidhi, which includes preaching words, Shravana Kirtana, Vishnu Smarana, the hearing and the chanting of the. So essentially, Prabhupada says by executing the 9 angas of bhakti, and he divides the 9 angas into Pancharatrika and Bhagavad. Right? And Prabhupada makes this point, the first canto, that bhakti is executed on the parallel rails of Pancharatrika and Bhagavad. Pancharatrika is bhakti by regulation, and Bhagavad is spontaneous bhakti. So things like worshipping deities, singing prayers of glorification, service, they are more Pancharatrika. And things like hearing, singing, dancing, meditation, they are Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada said that apparently a devotee may grow old, but he is not subject to the symptoms of old age. Right? So this is a very important point. That when somebody makes this claim that devotees, because of the devotion, will not grow old, then one can counteract it based on empirical evidence. That you're growing old, or there are so many other devotees who grow old. Past there are acharyas, they grew old, they died. So Prabhupada makes the point that they may grow old, but they do not experience the defeat by old age. So how does old age conquer a person? That it makes the person fearful. And a devotee remains fearless right up till the moment of death. Prabhupada was translating till pretty much his very last day. Right? 10th canto, 13th chapter. He was speaking the purports pretty much he was. He hadn't eaten for more than a month. He was barely drinking, but he was still, his mind was clear, and he was dictating. Now, even if devotees are not that empowered, there is so many evidence of devotees that they are fearlessly accepting death. So that symptom of jara, the real symptom of jara is the fear, and that does not affect the devotees. And Prabhupada says that a devotee knows that after death he's going back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, he has no fear of death. Thus, instead of depressing a devotee, advanced age helps him become fearless and thus happy. I remember I was once talking to a devotee, and he was going through some physical ailments, some diseases. And I was trying to commiserate with him. And of course, he was concerned with what was going on with his body. But then he very philosophically shrugs and he says, well, time for a new body. Whether it's a material or a spiritual body, time for a new body. Right? And he was pretty matter of fact about it. So by a lifelong practice of Krishna consciousness, by a lifelong study of the scriptures, it becomes intrinsic to one's own approach. That this intense fear of death that overtakes a materialist. Prabhupada once gives the example of a person who was very rich, and he was told that he has a limited amount of time to live, and he was offering, I can offer you so much of wealth, but I need 1 more year, and I need so much thing to work. After that, I will die. And then the doctor said that for all the wealth in the world, I cannot give you another day. Forget about a year. So for the materialist, it is a time of great fear, uncertainty of the unknown. And for the devotee, it's accepting the inevitable. That if I am fortunate and Krishna is merciful, I will go back to Godhead. If not, then I will get another opportunity to pursue my devotional service. So either way, nothing to lament about. Okay, let me pause over here and see if we have any discussion so far.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just a comment about the semen rise to the brain. I know in martial art and other practice, they follow that strictly, and sometimes also it's known as Kundalini Shakti. I don't know if you've heard about this term, and they practice it so that they do it mostly to get powers and other mystical power, not for studying or to become devotees, but they do it also.
You're right, Prabhu. I have heard about it, right? A very similar concept, right?
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. The last few things that you said about devotees don't fear and they don't lament just reminds me of the verse from Bhagavad Gita, Nasochati Nakamshati. So the devotees who are practicing pure bhakti already attained the Brahma Bhuta platform. So that is one of the symptoms of. So this ties in very well with the story.
It does. You're right. And primary symptom of Brahma Bhuta is equanimity, not being bewildered. Thank you, Prabhu.
There is that verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, text number 17, which explains sort of summarizes our discussion with, on this particular point on time, how time erodes everything. And it goes like, both by rising and setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone except for one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. And I was reading the other day a very revealing section from Rabindranath Swami's book, The Journey Within, where he was talking about time again. This is quoting directly from his book. Time is mystical, erodes mountains, evaporates oceans, obliterates planets, extinguishes the sun, and presides over every being in creation from womb to tomb. Nothing and no one can alter it for even a moment. Conquerors, billionaires, champions, and geniuses all must eventually accede to it and surrender everything they have accumulated. No scientific achievements or technological breakthrough can alter it. Beauty cannot seduce it. Bribe cannot entice it. Brains cannot deceive it. Entire military arsenal cannot stop it. Yet time is elusive. It cannot be seen, touched, tasted, smelled, or heard. With every tick of the clock's second hand, time is plundering or lies like a master thief. I thought it was a little poetic, but it's something to reflect on. And later down, there is another quote: time is carrying everyone towards the unknown end. If given a chance, one would like to stop time or reverse it. Nobody wants to be controlled by time. Everyone wants to stay young, or at least cherish the memory of youth. Time moves in one direction, and memory moves in another.
That is very interesting.
Yeah.
And I have experiential proof of that.
Yeah.
As I see that in myself, that memorizing verses used to come fairly easy to me earlier on. And now, sometimes I get frustrated with myself. I just memorized this word yesterday, and today I've already forgotten it. Then I have to remind myself I'm getting old.
There's one last line I'd like to share. It says here that the bad news is time cannot be reversed, but the good news is that we can go beyond the time, which means essentially practice of devotional service.
Very good. Thank you for sharing, Prabhu. Any other comments? Any other realizations? Okay, if not, we'll continue with verse 25. Dvapimam manusochanti balavasad avagrahu yalloka sastropan narati natadechati. One who does not give charity according to the customs or injunctions of the scripture, and one who does not accept charity in that way, are considered to be in the mode of ignorance. Such persons follow the path of the foolish. Surely they must lament at the end. So Kalkarmya is here speaking to Yavanraj and saying that those who do not give or accept charity as per injunctions have an inauspicious ending. So the reason she says that is that she's implying that I have come seeking shelter of you. And a Kshatriya must never refuse shelter to a supplicant. And also, I have been sent by a sadhu. So both as per as sadhu and as per as shastra, you must accept me. So what does the shastra says? That one must give charity and one must accept charity. So here giving charity means that he gives shelter and charity to Kalkanya. And accepting charity means that Kalkanya, being a woman, is offering herself to the king. So she is offering herself as charity to the king. So Kalkanya is saying that the Shastra says that one must accept charity and give charity as per the injunctions. So therefore, you should accept my proposal. And you should also follow the instructions of the sadhu. So by that way also, as for the sadhu and shastra, you accept me or else she wants that you will lament at the end. He says, you will be called foolish if you don't accept me, and you will lament at the end. So this underlying principle, we see it at different points in the scriptures also, right? So we see when Kaikeshi approaches Vishrava, the son of Pulastya Muni, and she says that, please accept me as a wife. And I've come here taking shelter of you. And Vishrava, understanding the principles of the scriptures, he accepts Kaikeshi. Similarly, we see in Yayati and Devyani that when Devyani had fallen into the well, she was without clothes. And Yayati, he pulls her out. And then Devyani says that, firstly, you have touched my body. And secondly, you have seen me as the way that only a husband sees. So, as per the scriptural injunctions, you have to accept me as a wife. So Yayati was actually very reluctant to accept Devyani because Yayati was a Kshatriya and Devyani was the daughter of a Brahman. She's the daughter of a Kshatriya. Right? So he actually initially protests, saying that this union will be inauspicious because it violates the Varnas. And Devyani says that is what it is, but this is also there. And of course, then Yayati accepts. We see the same thing in case of Vishwamitra and Menaka. That Menaka, when she comes taking shelter of Vishwamitra, Vishwamitra accepts, even though he was attracted. In all cases, there was some attraction. Yayati was attracted by Devyani, and presumably Vishrava was also. But there was also this desire to follow the scriptural injunctions. In the first canto, when Yudhishthir sees Arjun, so this is when Arjun had witnessed the passing away of of Krishna and his dynasty, and he comes back morose. This is the 14th chapter. So then Yudhishthir asks Arjun that, why are you so unhappy? And then he gives various reasons. And one of the reasons he says that, could it be that you have not given protection to somebody who approached you for shelter? And the understanding is that by doing so, the person loses his pious credits. Now, of course, if the person is not able to give shelter, that's a different thing. But if a person is able to give shelter and then refuses, then the person loses his piety. So Prabhupada quotes 1623 Bhagavad Gita, Ye Shastra Vidyamustrija, that one who discards scriptural injunction and acts according to his own whims, he attains neither perfection nor happiness nor supreme destination. And in the purport also, Prabhupada quotes from the Guru Charna. So this is the Guru Arti, that is Guru Puja, that is done in the temple. He says that Narottam Das Thakur says, Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya Chitite Kariya Akhi. That one should follow the principles of saintly persons, scriptures, and spiritual master. So this is, so we in the temple we sing the first 4 verses. The song actually has 10 verses, but as part of Guru Puja, we sing the first 4 verses every day in the temple. And interestingly, this is one of the few things, or probably one of the only things that was not given by Prabhupada. It was actually requested by his disciples. So his disciples, in fact, I forget the name of it. So one of his disciples had heard this and was very much attracted to it in connection with Prabhupada. So then he approached Prabhupada and said that, can we do Guru Puja and sing this Guru Charna Padma song? Initially, Prabhupada was reluctant. He said no, but then the disciples insisted, and then he agreed. And I think the first time it was done was in the Jew temple. I mean, that time the temple was still not made, but Giriraj Maharaj mentions that it was done over there, and then it kind of became a regular occurrence. And now, of course, it's one of the things that's done every day in all the temples. Okay, verse 26. Atho vajasvamam bhadra bhajantim me dayam puru etavan parusho dharmo yadartan anukampate. Kal Kanya continued, O gentle one, I am now present before you to serve you. Please accept me and thus show me mercy. It is a gentleman's greatest duty to be compassionate upon a person who is distressed. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that under these joking words, Kal Kanya is actually threatening the king. She is warning the king that even if you show strength, you cannot say, I will not accept old age. This is because, empowered by the vow of Narad, I will certainly destroy you. And Prabhupada explains in the purport, he explains the allegory as follows. He says that the instructions of Narad Muni can be considered to be the principles of bhakti. The fact that Yavan Raj accepts the instructions of Narad Muni, right? So he accepts Kal Kanya. He does not accept her as a wife, but he passes her on. But in a way, he becomes the cause of her shelter. So the fact that Yavan accepts the instructions of Narad Muni indicates that everyone is eligible to practice bhakti. The way to do this, Prabhupada says, is to begin by practicing the rules and regulations of bhakti. Preachers in Krishna consciousness movement have actually experienced that even the Yavanas and Malechas have taken to spiritual life on the strength of Narad Muni's Pancharatrika Vidhi. So Prabhupada takes this instruction, this allegory to explain that the principles of bhakti can reach everyone. Right? So even Yavanraj, he accepts Kalkanya. So, which indicates that everybody is open to, everybody can receive the instructions of bhakti. And then Prabhupada substantiates it with empirical evidence. He says, preaches in Krishna consciousness movement, and he's talking about himself and his disciples, that they went out and they preached in countries where there was no previous practical interaction with devotion. And on the strength of Narad Muni's Pancharatrika Vidhi, Prabhupada makes emphasis on that the Pancharatrika Vidhi is specially meant to introduce people who have no prior association with bhakti. Right? Which is, we have also experienced this, that Pancharatrika Vidhi is essentially following rules and regulations. One may or may not have any love for Godhead in their heart. Some faith is required, but not very strong faith. Just enough faith to follow instructions. Right? And that itself is the springboard to the highest realms of devotion. Okay, verse 27. Kalkanyo vacho nishamya yavaneshwaraha Chikirshurdeva bhuyam sa sasmitam tam abhashata. After hearing the statement of Kalkanya, the daughter of time, the king of the Yavanas began to smile and devise a means for executing his confidential duty on behalf of Providence. He then addressed Kalakanya as follows. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that here it is mentioned the king of Yavanas began to smile. So by this he is indicating that he is not going to refuse her words. So he also smiled because he could now understand that through Kalakanya, he will be able to perform the duty entrusted to him by Krishna. So he says, Chikirshur Deva Ghuyam, the confidential duty that has been given to him by Deva. The Deva here means the Lord. So what is this secret desire that the Lord gives to Yavanraj? That people become fearful of old age and take to spirituality. So old age, the fear of old age is one of the catalysts of people to become more spiritually inclined, because the nature of old age is that it makes the ability to enjoy materially weak. Now, it's not either necessary or sufficient, but nevertheless, it is one of the causes. Right? Clearly, it's not necessary because in youth also people can take to bhakti. And clearly it's not sufficient because even in old age, people do not take to bhakti. But it's nevertheless one of the causes. That's why conventionally it is said that as people grow older, they at least become more philosophical. They will not become devotional, but at least they become more philosophical. So that is the Chikarshur Deva Huyam. So this is the confidential desire of Krishna. So Prabhupada explains that like everyone, Yavanraj is also subservient to the wish of Krishna. Right? So Prabhupada says that for an intelligent person, the appearance of old age is an impetus to spiritual life. People naturally fear impending death. The king of Yavan tried to utilize Kalkanya for this person. And what about for those who are not intelligent? Prabhupada says they are mad. He says they're insane. He says they are simply pursuing material goals. So who does Prabhupada consider insane? The gross materialist. And then he calls the scientists who are simply denying the existence of consciousness and consider life to be a series of chemical reactions, and they essentially continue to suffer. Okay, verse 28. Maya nirupitastubhyam patiratma samadhina nabindati lokoyam tvam bhadram asammatam.
The king of the Yavan replied.
Paramatma Prabhu, you need to, yeah. The king of the
Sorry,
Yavan,
I had my microphone.
yeah, no worries. Actually, why don't you go ahead and read the translation, Prabhu?
The king of the Yavan replied, after much consideration, I have arrived at a husband for you. Actually, as far as everyone is concerned, you are inauspicious and mischievous. Since no one likes you, how can anyone accept you as his wife?
So Prabhupada says that after much consideration, the king of Yavanas decided to make the best use of a bad bargain. Kalkanya, so this is Jara or old age, is a bad bargain. No one liked her. But everything can be used for the service of the Lord. The king of Yavanas tried to utilize her for some purpose, and the purpose has been explained. That Kalkanya is Jara, the invalidity of old age, can be used to arouse a sense of fear in people, so they will prepare for the next life by engaging in Krishna consciousness. Right? So this is how fear serves Krishna in instilling the fear of material life and old age and inspiring devotion. Okay, verse 29. Tvam avyakta gatir bhungshva lokam karma vinirmitam yahi me pratana yukta prajanasham praneshyasi. Okay, want to read the translation from?
This world is a product of fruitive activities. Therefore, you may imperceptibly attack people in general. Helped by my soldiers, you can kill them without opposition.
So, Yavanraj is not accepting Kalkanya as his wife, but he is still offering her shelter, where he's offering the entire world to Kalkanya. Right? So he says that you can imperceptibly attack people in general. Which people? this world which is a product of fruitive activities, right? So he's talking about the earth planet, because the earth planet is known as karma bhumi. This is where there is the cycling of karma that is happening. So lokam karma vinirmitam, right? So she's offered this in particular. Now in other planets, there is no old age, right? So when we go to the planets of the demigods, there is birth and death, but there is no old age, right? Till the time that they die, they are young, and then they die. So going by the reasoning in the previous verses, this is why earth is considered to be fortunate, because it has old age. Because death is like a switch. So when you have a light, there are two ways that you can control the light. You can flip a switch and then it goes from on to off, or you can have a dimmer and then you turn the dimmer and then it goes dim, 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 dim and off. So the advantage of the dimmer is that as the light is growing weaker, you're aware of the fact that the light is growing weaker. That's the situation on the earth planet. As one is growing older, they are gradually becoming aware of the fact that their end is coming closer. So it is a reminder for them to take to spirituality. This is why the residents of other planets, they pray that maybe take birth on the earth planet, because opportunities to take to spirituality is more. For one reason, Krishna comes here. Now Krishna comes to other planets also, but also because of the fact that the lifetime is short, and the miseries they're just the right amount of miseries. Not enough to bewilder, but enough to make the person want to escape this material condition. So, as we discussed, that Narad Muni, he represents bhakti which is ever fresh, which is never affected by old age. Right? Bhakti is constantly rejuvenating itself. Yavan Raj represents death, which is also not affected by old age. Death is always there. There's never a time when, as they say, that there's never a time when death dies. Death is always there. So it's not impacted by old age. But the people who are living the consequences of fruitive activities, people who are living the cycle of karma, they are constantly attacked by old age. Okay, this is an important statement, that they're constantly attacked by old age. Right from birth, they're attacked by old age. Right? So every moment they're growing old. So one may wonder that when a wife or a woman marries a man, then the marriage, if it is Vedic, the woman serves the man, assists the man, or nurtures the man. Here we see that Kalakanya is entering into this marriage only for the purpose of enjoyment. Right? So that is the basis of a marriage that is not sanctioned by the Vedas, where the husband looks to exploit the wife and the wife looks to exploit the husband. So the enjoyment is done at the expense of each other. So Yavan Raj here is encouraging Kalakanya to enjoy. So who is the husband of Kalakanya? The conditioned jivas, specifically those who are on the earth planet. So Yavan Raj is saying you go and enjoy with them, which means that you go and exploit them. And and ultimately destroy them. So Kalkanya might say that I'm fine with it. But what if they detect that I have entered into this union with them for the purpose of destroying them? So Yavanraj, he gives her two assurances. He says that they will not detect it because you will do it imperceptibly, right? He says you may imperceptibly attack people. So he said you will do it in such a subtle way that they will not detect it. So there's an analogy of if you put a frog in hot water, the frog will jump out of it, too hot for it. If you put a frog in cold water and then you gradually heat the water, then even when the temperature of the water is more than what it would have been when it jumped out, frog is still happily sitting there because the temperature is increasing imperceptibly. Yavanraj gives that one assurance. And second assurance he says is that you will be held by my soldiers. Who are the soldiers of death? Diseases, right? So he says, I have three kinds of soldiers, Adhyatmika, Adevik, and Adi Bhautik. They will help you. So even if the jiva tries to fight you, then my soldiers will help you defeat. Okay, then we come to the last verse of the chapter. Rajvaroyam mama brata tvam chame bhagni bhava charamya upaha bhayam lokasmin avyakto bhimasenikaha. Go ahead, Prabhu.
The king of the Yavanas continued, here is my brother, Prajvara. I now accept you as my sister. I shall employ both of you, as well as my dangerous soldiers, to act imperceptibly within this world.
So when the Yavanraj, he directs Kalkanya to accept all the conditioned jivas as her husband, she might object that Narad Muni has asked me to take shelter of you. And you are also bound to accept the instructions of the sadhu. So won't this make the words of Narad Muni come true? So Vishwanath Chakravarti, he explains that this is reconciled by the statement of the king of Yavanas in this verse, right? So Yavanraj represents death or fear of death. They are used interchangeably. And so Vishwanath Chakravarti interpolates certain aspects of the conversation. So he says that Yavanraj tells Kalkanya that I'm accepting you as my sister. So here he says that here is my brother, Rajvara. I now accept you as my sister, right? So Kalkanya might say, how can you accept me as your sister when I'm supposed to be your wife? So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Yavanraj says that we are both in the lineage of Adharma. And in the lineage of Adharma, brothers marry sisters. So this we studied in the 4th canto, 8th chapter, right? When we were talking about how the sons and daughters of the descendants of Adharma were marrying each other, right? So he's saying we are in the descendants of Adharma. I'm accepting you as a sister. So you are my sister as well as my wife. I am your brother as well as your husband. Therefore, the words of Narad Muni will not go in vain. Right? So how do the two reconcile? So Yavanraj says, if I go near the devotees of the Lord, having enjoyed me excessively, destroy me. Which essentially means that old age actually gives immortality to the devotees. So as the devotees age, the devotional practices mature and they get freedom from death. So actually, in the case of devotees, old age destroys death. Right? Old age does not lead to death, old age destroys death. Because over the period of time, the devotional practices mature. Right? So he makes this statement. Then he says that just as you could not make Narad your husband, do not make the devotees your husband. Which means that devotees will never grow old in the sense that they will not be afflicted by the symptoms of old age, as we discussed in the previous word. And what about the others? He says, enjoy invisibly with the people made of karma. Since the existence of all these people is based on fear, and I am that fear, when you enjoy them, you will be enjoying me. Right? So you are that way you are my wife. In other words, the materialistic persons exist in a constant state of fear and they quickly become afflicted by old age. Sometimes we see this empirically also, that people who live a very strongly material life, they age very quickly. And there are external symptoms also, that they have tension and pressures and whatever. But regardless of whatever, this is something that can be seen empirically around. People who live who are very much materially engrossed, they grow old very, and at least they look much older very quickly. So this is how Vishwanath Chakravarti, he says that Yavanraj assures Kalkanya that the words of Narad Muni will not come true. Prabhupada says that old age is in not itself the cause of suffering or death. When it is aided by the soldiers of Yavanraj, namely non-hygienic conditions, illicit sex, and ultimately a high degree of temperature to bring to death. Trachvar is Vishnu Jwar, high fever sent by Lord Vishnu at the time of death. There are two types. There is hot fever, which is typhoid, and there is cold, which is pneumonia. And Prabhupada comments on the external storyline also. He says that those who do not follow the Vedic principles are unrestricted as far as sex life is concerned. Consequently, sometimes they do not hesitate to have sex with their sisters. In this age of Kali, there are so many instances of such incest. Although Yavanraj accepted the request of Narad Muni to show respect to him, he was nonetheless thinking of illicit sex. This is because of him being the king of the Yavanas and Valechas. So this also indicates that if one is trying to follow the instructions of the superior, due to bad association, one will be inclined to follow them in a sinful manner. Right? So Narad is saying to Yavanraj that you accept Kalkanya as a wife. Now Yavanraj is saying, I accept you as my sister, but I will treat you as my wife. So he's accepting the instructions, but in a sinful manner. And sometimes we see that, like there was a case of in one of the temples in California, some of the devotees over there. So there was this whole fundraising to build temple, etc. And some of the devotees over there, they were distributing drugs to get money for the temple. So the instruction they were following, they try and raise Lakshmi for the temple. but they were doing it sinfully. That they were distributing drugs to do it. So it's or like another example that is given is like Prabhupada often gives instructions of the nature relationship between a husband and a wife. And there are cases where the devotees, especially the men, they accept it in a sinful way, which means that they use the instructions to prosecute their wives, to abuse them either emotionally or physically to establish the supremacy. They quote part of what Prabhupada's instructions are. So this was, at one point, this was a big problem in the movement, that people mistook this instruction of Prabhupada to basically support misogyny. And it just an example of the mentality of Yavanraj. Okay, so this we end the chapter, and actually, I kind of like the fact that if somebody can read the purport after I read the verse, so maybe we can have different devotees read purports at different. Just a thought I can discuss with Prem Kishore Prabhu. But somebody can read the purports or take turns in reading the purport. Not the purports, the translation. That may be good. Okay, so I know I'm over time, but I quickly summarize the chapter. That 30 verses in the chapter begins with Puranjan enjoying with Queen, the Jiva enjoying with the material intelligence. Then talks about Puranjan's family, that how the Jiva, by consorting with his intelligence, creates so many enjoyments, actions, reactions, karmas, vikarmas. So that way the family of Puranjan, by sons and grandsons and great-grandsons, grew larger and larger. And then he is attacked by Chandvik. Chandvik represents time. So he's attacked by time, and along with time comes Kalkanya. Kalkanya is old age, and old age is basically accompanied with Bhaya, the Yavanraj, who's Bhaya or Mrityu. So the Jiva, absorbed in the material intelligence, creates so many samskars, so many karmas, so many reactions, and time is imperceptibly coming. It attacks his body, creates a lot of disturbance, heralds the coming of the old age, and then finally Prajvara, diseases come, and ultimately death comes. So the beginning part of the next chapter will talk about the conquest of the city of the 9 gates by the soldiers of Chandvega, essentially the death of Puranjan, right? And then after that is the rebirth of Puranjan as Vedarbi. Okay, so I'll stop here and see if there's any thoughts or comments.
And Hare Krishna Prabhu, this has been a journey, very different from other chapters, and it's mostly about us, living in this material world. And Prabhupada was very, very straightforward and in the purport.
It's about us in both ways. So it's about us as Puranjan, and it's about us as Narad Muni also, right? Because Prabhupada gives us a lot of assurance, saying that all you have to do is to follow the Pancharatrik Vidhi, right? He does not say you have to follow the Bhagavad Vidhi. So you don't have to develop spontaneous love of devotion to be feared, to be escaping the fear of old age. Pancharatrik Vidhi is sufficient. Pancharatrik Vidhi says, do your deity worship, avoid sinful reactions. So just the external following of the rules and regulations of bhakti is sufficient to conquer old age and death, right? And it is sufficient to eventually bring about the the spontaneous devotion. So that is very reassuring to
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no more comments, we'll end here. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Sila Prabhupada ki jai. Thai Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you.